My wife cheated with my employee and gleefully agreed to the divorce, thinking she'd secured my assets. But then my lawyer said one sentence that made her entire world collapse. Hello Reddit, I plus here. The first time I realized something was wrong with my marriage wasn't when my wife, Tessa, started working late. It was when she stopped caring if I noticed. For years, I believed that love could survive anything. Long hours, exhaustion, even the quiet erosion that creeps in when success becomes more important than connection. But I was wrong. We'd built our life from the ground up. Two ambitious people who shared dreams of wealth, security, and a little house near the coast. I founded a small logistics firm that grew faster than anyone expected, and she handled the finances. We were a team, or at least I thought we were, until I walked into my office one evening, long after everyone else had gone home, and found her in the boardroom with my own employee. It wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no tears, no flying papers. She just froze, half-dressed, eyes wide with disbelief that I'd actually shown up. My employee, Mark, stumbled through an apology that meant nothing. Tessa didn't even bother pretending it wasn't what it looked like. She said, "We're done anyway. Let's not make this messy." That was the moment something inside me snapped. Not with rage, but with clarity. I'd been building a future for two people who'd stopped walking the same path a long time ago. And now she'd just given me permission to stop pretending. The divorce. She was quick to agree to the divorce, almost too quick. Within a week, her lawyer sent over a proposed settlement that made me laugh. Half the assets, the house, even a claim on future business profits. I'd built the company before we even married. But somehow she believed she'd secured her fortune through manipulation. I didn't argue. I let her think she'd won. I signed the preliminary papers with a calmness that unnerved her. Tessa mistook my silence for surrender. She should have known better. My attorney, an old friend named Harris, was the kind of man who could take apart a legal argument with surgical precision. We'd spent weeks preparing quietly, gathering documents and bank records that told a different story. A story Tessa didn't know we were writing. When we finally met for mediation, she arrived in designer heels and a victorious smile. Her lawyer laid out demands, figures, and spreadsheets that painted me as the generous ex-husband she had outsmarted. Then Harris leaned forward and said one calm sentence. "Before we proceed, your client should be aware that all assets transferred into the company trust last year were legally protected under a post-nuptial agreement, signed by both parties." Her smile faltered. The room went silent. Tessa turned to me, her face draining of color. "What agreement?" Harris slid a document across the table. Her signature was right there, dated and notarized. She'd signed it herself the day she became the company's financial officer, something she'd done in a rush, too eager to impress our investors to read the fine print. The agreement stated that any marital or personal claims on the company's assets were void. She hadn't secured my fortune. She'd signed it away. For a moment, she tried to recover her composure. "That's not valid. He tricked me." But Harris was ready. "The signatures are clear, the witnesses verified, and the documents filed with the state registry. You had full legal counsel available at the time. You chose not to use it." Her lawyer whispered something, glanced at the paper, then looked at her with quiet resignation. They both knew it was over. The house she'd demanded, purchased through the trust, the savings she counted on, tied to company profits. The only thing she could legally claim was a modest settlement, barely enough to cover her lawyer's fees. Tessa's hands trembled. She stared at me with a look that wasn't anger anymore. It was realization. She had traded love for greed, and lost both. After the proceedings, she reached out a few times. The first message was defensive, the next desperate, and the last one quiet. "I didn't think you'd do this to me." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The truth was, I hadn't done anything to her. She'd done it to herself, signing away her future out of arrogance, mistaking kindness for weakness, and betrayal for victory. I focused on rebuilding. My company, my peace, my life. The silence that used to feel heavy now felt like freedom. For the first time in years, I could breathe. Months later, I heard she'd tried to start over. But every time she applied for credit, tried to buy property, or filed for taxes, that sentence from my lawyer came back to haunt her. All assets transferred into the company trust were legally protected under a post-nuptial agreement, signed by both parties. A single line, one signature, her own hand sealing her fate. Sometimes I wonder if she remembers the moment she realized it was over. Not the marriage, but the illusion that she could take everything and walk away untouched. And maybe, just maybe, that one sentence still echoes in her head the way her betrayal once echoed in mine. Never mistake silence for weakness. Sometimes it's the sound of someone letting you believe you've won, just long enough to show you what losing truly feels like. It had been 6 months since the divorce was finalized, when Tessa's name flashed on my phone again. At first, I ignored it. Then came the messages. Long, emotional paragraphs at midnight, fragments of regret and nostalgia tangled with half-truths. I've been thinking about us. We made mistakes, but I still care. Can we at least talk like adults? I could almost hear her voice. The same tone she used to soften arguments, to twist guilt into sympathy. She was good at that. Always had been. But the strange thing was, the more she tried to pull me back, the less I recognized her. She showed up at my office one afternoon unannounced, standing in the lobby like a stranger pretending to belong there. Her hair was perfectly styled, her perfume familiar, but her confidence, the armor she used to wear so effortlessly, was cracked. "Can we talk? Just 5 minutes?" she said softly. I led her into the conference room, the same one where I'd found her with Mark months ago. Maybe she chose it on purpose. Maybe she thought it would make me remember something warm, something worth forgiving. "I made a mistake," she began, tears brimming just enough to look sincere. "I thought I wanted something else, but it was never real. We were real, I got lost." She reached for my hand. I didn't move. "I'm glad you found clarity," I said evenly. "But there's nothing left to fix." Her expression changed in an instant. From sorrow to disbelief, she'd expected me to hesitate, to melt. When I didn't, she blinked back tears and left without another word. 2 weeks later, she tried again. This time through my assistant, a business inquiry, she called it. Something about consulting for her new venture. When I realized it was her company email, I sent a reply. "I don't mix business with the past. Find another consultant." An hour later, another message arrived. Personal this time. "You're really going to ignore me like I never mattered? After everything?" I didn't answer. Silence once again. Said more than I ever could. The third time, she found my favorite cafe, the one I'd discovered after the divorce. My quiet refuge. She was already there when I walked in, pretending to be surprised. "Oh, I didn't think you came here," she said, voice bright. Too rehearsed. I smiled politely. "I did. I just didn't expect company." She laughed nervously, stirring her coffee though she hadn't taken a sip. Then came the script. How she'd changed, how she'd learned, how she still dreamed of what we could be if we just started over. It was almost convincing. Almost. But then I saw the expensive watch on her wrist, the designer bag she couldn't afford now, the mask she was still trying to wear. "You don't miss me," I said quietly. "You miss the life you had when you were with me." Her face fell. For a moment she looked small, like a person who had finally run out of lies to hide behind months past. I didn't hear from her again, until one evening near winter, when I got a message that read, "I'm sorry for everything. I really am. I just wanted to say goodbye." This time I replied, "Goodbye, Tessa. I hope you find peace." No anger, no triumph, just closure. She didn't answer, but I knew she'd read it, probably 100 times, waiting for something that wasn't coming. Forgiveness, maybe, or the version of me she could still control. A year later, I ran into Mark, the employee she'd betrayed me with. He looked hollowed out, like someone who'd aged 10 years in one. He told me they'd broken up months after the divorce, said she'd tried to rebuild, start new ventures. But nothing lasted. "She still talks about you," he admitted, shaking his head. "Says you ruined her life." I smiled faintly. "No," I said. "I just stopped letting her ruin mine." Lesson she never learned. In the end, Tessa never truly understood what she'd lost. She thought love was something you could return to once you missed it enough, that people would always wait for you to come back when you were done chasing your mistakes. But she forgot that when trust is gone, it doesn't break cleanly. It turns to dust. And no matter how hard you try, you can't rebuild something that's already slipped through your fingers. And so, the woman who once thought she could take everything from me was left haunted by everything she couldn't have again. Not my money, not my forgiveness, and not my heart.